product manager proposes this particular idea. We want to add this capability to platform's messaging system to allow interaction with other platforms and third-party businesses. Now, our question is, how would you determine whether this change is a good idea? Hey, everyone. Today, we're going to have Priya Singla, and we're going to talk about some product analytics questions. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Hanif Mahboubi. I've been in this industry, data science, AI, ML, and analytics for over a decade now, and has been in different companies, including Group M, Albertsons, Meta, and Amazon. I've also been helping aspiring data scientists or the ones that who want to progress. Yeah, hopefully we're gonna have an interesting session. Priya, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Definitely. Hi, this is Priya. I have been in this industry analytics, data science, causal inference, experimentation for almost 8 years now. I just love reading, I just love solving problems for users, user analytics, understanding the user psychology and building products for them. So I use my data skills to understand users and solve their pain points. Yeah, let's get started.
The problem that you're going to talk about is, as I said, is going to be about product analytics. And you can assume that you have a role of a product data scientist for Instagram. Well, let's assume that a product manager proposes this particular idea. We want to add this capability to platform's messaging system to allow interaction with other platforms and third-party businesses. One example would be, let's say, if you're ordering something from DoorDash or Grubhub, we allow the company to send messages to Instagram users and basically about their Grubhub order. So basically they can receive notifications and maybe even contact the driver through that app. I think the vision could be a more consolidated framework if you want to interact with other third-party apps. But that's basically the gist of idea.
So when you say that we are going to combine this, all of this is going to be in the same inbox for Instagram.
I mean, we can have an inbox, but of course, I mean, through for each application or a third-party application, we have a dedicated tab or whatever. Or it could be just yet another message, not necessarily dedicated space.
Got it.
But we can just simplify that for now. Maybe later on, I mean, we can add more complexity to this mix. But for now, we can just think of the most basic implementation.
So let me just think through what are the different steps that we should actually think before we actually decide to make this decision. My first thing would be why are we doing this, right? And how is it going to affect the current user journey? Where in the funnel are we going to impact the user, right? Are we going to impact the engagement, acquisition? What is it going to be? And then I will think about how is it going to actually affect Meta in turn, right? Is it going to actually fulfill the overall purpose of bringing the world together? The reason Meta wants to do this, or reason Instagram wants to do it, because we want the users to never leave our platform, right? We want the users to be hooked to a platform. For example, on Instagram, messaging a friend, but I know I have a DoorDash order, or I know there's a Grubhub order or an Amazon order, and the driver is trying to call me, right? He's trying to interact with me. I'll leave the messenger, right? So this is where I am leaving the Instagram messenger and going to other platforms. So this might be one of the reasons that why Instagram is trying to do this. So I'll just start writing, why are we doing this? How I think through it, right? How is it going to impact the user journey? Right, that people are not going to leave the Instagram. They can talk to simultaneous people, right, logged in the same messenger app. I'm talking to my friend, I'm talking to the Instacart shopper for me, I'm talking to the Grubhub, I'm talking to my DoorDash, my Dasher. So it can be all done on the single platform. Now, how is it going to impact a Meta or Instagram as a product? How is it going to impact user journey? How is it going to Impact Instagram. We know the Meta's mission is to bring the world closer together, make people hooked to their website, make them spend more time. Of course, if they're not leaving our platform again and again, they are hooked, right? So this is how they are going to impact Instagram. Now, going in depth, how is it going to impact each one of the different user segments? Let us break this down. What are the different metrics that are going to be impacted? And when I talk about metrics, I'll be talking about the consumer metrics, and then we'll potentially do maybe the opportunity sizing based on the impact and pros and cons of the feature. For metrics, I'll break it down into the consumer metrics, producer metrics. And here my producer will be all the different businesses who are ready to sign up for a unified inbox with us. What are the cannibalization metrics, right? Like what should be impacted? Then what are the guardrail metrics? Like that won't be impacted at all. And what is the final NSM that will be impacted, right? Let's think about this. Okay, if a user is actually hooked to your product, he's talking to all the different users, like it can be the B2B businesses, it can be the friends or anyone, his average number of conversations are going to will increase. In turn, distinct conversations are going to increase. So me talking to just one person, having back and forth conversations versus distinct users with whom I'm having conversations, distinct conversations. That's gonna increase. Average length of conversation per login, right? Because I know people are not going to log out again and again, right? They're not going to do app opens, app reopens again and again, right? So I know per login, the average length of conversation, total conversation length with all the different users or businesses they are talking to divided by the number of login sessions, that is going to increase. So average number of length per login conversation, then the time span, of course, frequency of visit. Now they're logging in on the messenger just to check about their Grubhub order. Once they are used to that product, once they're habitual of that, we develop that habit, right? That they leave the other platforms and they have just one-stop shop for all the products. Now, when I talk about producer metrics, it also depends on how like people are going to actually react to the Grubhub. Like Grubhub might agree for a unified inbox with us, but if he's not receiving that response from the customer on this platform, they are going to back out too. So we need to think about that also to make unified inbox as a successful product. So what is the average number of responses they are getting from user? Right? So that user is on the Grubhub, he ordered through Grubhub, but he's actually having the conversation about the order through Instagram.
Basically, like an indication of adoption.
Adoption, exactly, adoption. And also I would like to note like weekly number of, because this is going to be a new business feature, right, for B2B. So weekly number of businesses that sign up for unified inbox. Because they need to sign up, they need to agree, we need to develop that, APIs and the platform and everything, right, to for them to interact. Now, there is a very, very high chance for cannibalization, because if we look at Instagram as a product, it's not just messaging, right? It's also about creating the stories, creating interesting content, viewing interesting content, right? Like looking at the timeline, grids of different users. What we don't want is that people are just hooked to Instagram, and by the end of the day, they're like, oh, I'm just like using too much Instagram, right? It's so toxic. Or we don't want the users to feel that. We don't want them to decrease in the overall engagement score on the platform, right? So when I say engagement score, I would maybe do a weighted engagement score or an average engagement score on the platform apart from Messenger. An engagement score will comprise of the time spent on timeline, on viewing post, creating post, everything, creating posts, right? Viewing stories, etc. So we are going to A/B test this feature maybe before we launch this, but these will be the metrics that we are definitely going to look, because there is a high chance that people are so engaged in the conversations that they're not logging back in or not looking at the timeline again, right? Or they're not looking at the notifications on their timeline.
Is it fair to say that for especially the top portion of the metrics that you mentioned, the consumer ones, and anything else, I think we need to distinguish. I mean, if you're setting out metrics for A/B testing, that should be something compatible with those cases. For example, We are going to be avoiding any feature dependent metric for that matter. But of course, I mean, we can always track them to see how is the success of product looking like. But at least for that initial decision making, I mean, when we are trying to understand the effect on the entire platform, I think that's something that we need to ever often highlight that okay, everything that we consider, like time is spent on platform and all those conversations are going to be agnostic to that those changes.
Oh, yes, definitely. They are going to be independent of that feature. And that is why I have written the North Star metric at the bottommost, because we know for any feature change that we do, we are going to impact the North Star metric. And that impact is coming from all the following metrics, which may be the frequency of login, which may be the average time spent, which can be DAU by WAU ratio, MDAU. Right. So we are not going to do any feature specific metric because we know we cannot have that in A version. It's going to be only in B version. Like after cannibalization, like cannibalization metric can be in both, right? Producer metric, it can't be in both, right? We are not going to have producer metric. So I'm only going to consider the engagement level consumer metrics when I'm A/B testing. Now, when I'm talking about guardrail metrics, Hanif, it's like they are the metrics which are not getting impacted at all. For example, number of app downloads, right? We don't know if this feature becomes really very popular, right? Oh, this is a one-stop shop for all the different kind of, then it may be, but initially I'm not expecting the app downloads or the number of logins that are going to increase. App crashes, right? It shouldn't, like there shouldn't be app crashes. Like I know Instagram has wonderful engineers who are going to build wonderful APIs. So yeah, app crashes, maybe page load time, all these like all the metrics they are not going to get impacted. Right, so these are the guardrail metrics that I'll just look at that that are not getting impacted by the feature. Now when it comes to North Star metric, I'll definitely look at average overall time spent per user. Then I know this is one of the consumer metric, but for all the users, what are the average time spent? And I'll be looking at this in the A and the B version both. DAU by WAU ratio, logins in 24 hours, number of logins is going to increase, or I can say frequency of login. Now, when I'm looking at this, right, this North Star metrics, this is something that overall we want for Meta as a mission. People are hooked to your product, and overall it will lead to increase in the CTR rates and revenue. One of the guardrail metrics can be number of ads viewed per, right? And this can be a cannibalization metric also, because if we are thinking about the revenue and the CTRs, if people are hooked to the Instagram, we can show them ads on the Instagram also, or Messenger also, right? Number of ads viewed per user, they should not get impacted. App crashes should not. But overall, it's going to impact the North Star metric, and this can be few of the A/B testing core metrics that we are going to test. Now,
so for such metrics that we're talking about, like performance and like some of those that could be impacted negatively, I would just say like put, as you mentioned, I think maybe putting them under cannibalization is better, maybe like closer to common practices. And I would like reserve guardrail metrics for the stuff that could go wrong, and we just like really want to pay attention to them. I think some of the examples that you had up there, like app crashes, like loading time, I mean, it could be any complaints or like spam reports or fraud report. That could happen. You never know. I mean, if this is the real app or somebody's like intruding. So I think those are the stuff that really pay attention to as guardrails. But then we can pretty much like bundle anything outside of our main focus to be affected in under cannibalization.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, I'll put these as A/B testing metric. But before we actually build this feature, prioritize this feature, maybe I'll try to look at, has there been anything like that done before? What we call as the opportunity sizing. So I usually do this by 4 different things. Like if the user past action shows something like that, right? Or if there has been a similar product that has already been launched under the Meta Eco framework, then there is voice of customer that I trust the most. I used to work for voice of customer team once, and when people say, oh, like I get disturbed, I get interrupted, so I'll try to find some clues like that. What are people actually trying to say, right? When we say past actions, I know there is no unified product like that, but what we are trying to interpret is that are people actually responding to marketers? Are people actually responding to places where buyers and seller meet? So maybe we can have a look at marketplace data, right? Because in marketplace, when people are trying to meet, buy or sell product. Maybe they're selling food, maybe they're selling items, right? They're actually having conversations on Messenger too, right? When they finally. So by this, we will know that people are actually trusting our platform enough that they are ready to talk to strangers who are buying or selling things. So one is the marketplace data, right? I'll look at the average number of conversation, average number of responses, how much people are actually interested in talking about businesses, right? Or just exchange of goods over there. Second data that I would look at is maybe some participation in the events or the group where similar kind of exchanges are happening. Like this is the only user data that I can look at, because like I know Facebook, until Facebook has something already, right? Like I know we are doing the sizing for Instagram, but I'll maybe look at the Facebook or maybe the WhatsApp groups if people are actually doing similar kind of conversations when it comes to buying or selling. This
And
is
of course,
one.
your universe to begin with is probably people that have like both like Grubhub app or like some sort of like engagement on that. That's something that hopefully at least we can get something from those partners, like those like third
Oh
party,
yes,
that you're gonna jointly work with them. So
exactly.
we can basically marry the two world, like making sure that like population that we are working on as a baseline is sizable enough, and then on top of that we can build all those stuff like basically detections and identifying like potential customers.
Exactly. And even with this data, we can have different segments. Okay, people are selling food, people are selling apparels, people are selling home furnitures on marketplace, right? So how big is the market size? And are people actually inclined towards talking to non-friends, because they are not friends. They are exchanging goods. They're buying and selling things, right? So this is what other platforms like Grubhub, DoorDash, Instagram, this is what we are talking about, right? Integrating. So this is will have a rough opportunity size, how much, what is the size of people and how interested they are. And is the average number of conversations or the conversation length meaningful enough for us to develop this feature? Now, when we talk about opportunity sizing or any other feature, every feature has a pros and cons. So this is the last part that I would come to. I know that, okay, we are clear with what is the purpose of doing this. How is it going to impact the user journey? It's going to be helpful for Instagram. We definitely have the opportunity sizing for that. But what are the cons of this feature is something that we need to think, so that people don't, shy away, or they don't unsubscribe, or unload the apps. So one thing can be, there can be a lot of spam or scams, like if you talk about con, right? Because exchanging good also involves exchanging money, right? So you never know in future if people are hey, can you deposit $10 as an advance? We never know if there can be scammers, right? Who are creating Grubhub accounts. They're saying, hey, this is so and so from Grubhub, I need $10 to clear your bill, I need $10 for the delivery. The platform should be trustable enough, right, for the users. And for that, I would definitely recommend that consumers or producers, right, which are the people who are going to have a unified inbox with us, they go through a thorough security checks and are fully verified before we actually connect them to the consumer. If there are no payments on the platform, consumers should be made clear that payments on the platform, they're not a liability of Instagram. You shouldn't do any payments on the platform, right? So there are some pros and cons of the feature, which is one of the big con, right? Scammers, the spam messages, right? Or if there are too many messages that people are just, kind of muting and people are shying away. This is something that I would definitely take care. Pros are definitely people would get hooked to the app, and in long term, it can have more app downloads. Like instead of having 10 different apps, I'll have just one app where I know users are going to maybe DoorDash or my Instacart person is just going to contact me there. So yeah, this is how I would try to frame the problem, look at the metrics, look at the pros and cons, and then if there are cons, how can we address those user pain points, and then decide on
I think
what.
I like how do you set up all those metrics. Again, I mean, it's not like hard and fast rule, but sometimes I mean, it's a matter of rearranging some of them. But then like for the North Star metric, I think it is typically also like a common practice to maybe like bundle basically as how one single metric as North Star metric, but then there could be a lot of other drivers to actually push it upward, like improve that North Star metric. So it's good to like stick to one thing, single one, and then like have the rest like marching toward that goal. I think I also like the idea of what are the potential pitfalls and how we can proactively avoid that by creating awareness and like clarity on how exactly it's going to be useful for you guys and for the users, and what is it not for. For example, we're a disclaimer that okay, no payment will be done through this particular capability or through messaging. I think that's really important. But eventually, the goal is that can we offload some of the like interactions or like transactions that are going to be supposed to happen via the native app like Grubhub and move them to Instagram instead. I think that that's more like a maybe future vision that just in addition to just like notification or like simple messaging, can we do more potentially? That probably deserves like another discussion. Okay, if we want to enable like ordering, given like reordering, repeated orders, like payment, something like that, it's probably more advanced feature and like different types of risks probably.
No, definitely. Yeah, opportunity sizing and then future opportunities. So after opportunity sizing is pros and cons, and then we can talk about maybe future opportunity of expanding the
So
product.
you mentioned like A/B testing. I think worth maybe spending a little bit on that. How do you see that set up given your like goal? What's going to be the difference between the two sets? What's going to be your hypothesis?
So yes, definitely. Difference between two sets would be people. Firstly, if we cannot allow any random business to message people, so just like there is a method for friend request to be sent, I think this feature should have a request sent by the Grubhub for the consumer to accept it. That Grubhub wants to connect with you, right? Once he accepts, then only he should be allowed to send messages. So there can be any random people. So how I would set is in the A version, just normal Instagram messenger, like people do it. In the B version, people are getting a request from the businesses. They are usually, and they can have a common login ID or email ID with Grubhub and Instagram. That's how Grubhub users, businesses will find them on Instagram, right? Like depends on how the feature is built, but yeah, this is my idea. On the B version, people are going to accept the request and they are going to start messaging each other. So when I'm going to set the A/B test, I'm not going to observe the metric, how many people are getting accepted the friend request or message. The metrics that I'm going to look at is average number of conversations. And a conversation is defined by someone who's sending and then who's getting replies. Average number of messages sent and that are not being answered. Because if in the B version, people are not interested in the messaging, right? So what percentage of messages are not being answered?
Interesting point that kind of urges the discussion about how we can balance the two set. Basically, if you're let's say if you're doing a pre-split, or like do we assign the exposure to those groups beforehand, or is it going to be like dynamic split? How each scenario will work in this case? Because we know that we might just like okay, we might just like notify them that this is a capability, but then they may not accept that, they may not respond that or
Exactly.
participate that. But then the question is, should we just like go ahead based on intent to treat? We have the intention, we do the split and all this balancing based on that, or no, we just like see how much we can catch, I mean, out of that population. What's your take on that?
So for my I think when people open their Instagram Messenger, that should be the qualifying criteria for both the groups. All the users who are opening their Instagram messengers, they are in both the groups. Now, in the B variant, people are actually getting the request within the messenger. They are not getting notified on the platform. They are getting that notification in the messenger. Do you want to accept the message, right? So that's the feature specific metric, feature adoption, feature engagement metric that I look at the B variant separately when I'm trying to do the A/B test root analysis. With just the A/B test, suppose I have an A/B test dashboard and I have the core metrics to see that, okay, is this feature finally impacting? I look at average number of conversation, average time spent, a frequency of visits, distinct conversations, and maybe DAU by WA. Now, because you said there is one North Star metric, so what I'll do is the time spent per user is my one North Star metric. Me having conversation with just my friends versus me having conversation for almost all the daily tasks I have, right? There's a delivery order, there's Amazon delivery order, anything that I have, right? On the Instagram, I'm going to spend more time overall. So my North Star metric in the B variant would be the time, A and B variant would be the average time spent, the click-through rates, right? Because we don't want people to be so engaged that they're not even looking at ads, right? Because we are
Mhm.
going to show them ads finally. Apart from click-through rate, was just the revenue in both the groups.
Anything else about like the A/B testing that you wanna like elaborate on?
So I
Or
think that, yeah, the qualifying criteria won't be all the Instagram users. It should be just the messenger users, people like users who are opening messengers. Yeah, I think these are the metrics. Then the cannibalization metric is also something that I'll put in my A/B test dashboard, right? The engagement score, average number of posts viewed, average number of stories created, average number of stories viewed. These are some of the metrics. Guardrail metrics is something that I'm going to put in my A/B test dashboard. And yeah, depending on the how much is the opportunity size we have, how many people we actually have who are interested, or what are the app opens, we'll maybe run it for a little bit longer time, because people, this is a very different feature and people will take time to adopt to it. Some of the deliveries can be the delivery within the same day, some of the delivery can take days. For example, it's an Amazon delivery, you ordered, right, but you received order confirmation on day one, but you received the people the delivery boy coming to your doorstep on day four. Average length of conversation or the conversation with Amazon can extend for days, right? Whereas conversation with DoorDash will be one day thing. Yeah, this is something that maybe I'll do as a root cause analysis later. Once I know if this feature is successful, or even if this feature is not successful, we will anyways do a root cause analysis. What's helping this feature or not helping this feature.
and then what is your like let's say we wrap up the test and with all the metrics coming in, what is your thought process to like decide if this is really a good thing to launch or not?
Okay, so if everything is neutral, like there is something called as the statistical significance. There's something called as practical significance. Is if everything is neutral, right? Because we actually do it at times. That everything is neutral, but we are taking a lot of effort in building this feature, right? In marketing this feature, and the revenue is same, like user interaction is same. Then why are we doing that effort? So it doesn't make sense to utilize your engineering, your resources, and have some load on the app, use more of like resources to just build this feature, if it is actually having any kind of engagement increase, which will impact in the long, have a good impact in the long term, or any kind of bottom of the funnel or the top of the funnel increase, like there are app downloads just because this feature is so famous, right? If it is having any kind of impact, then I'm definitely going to launch this feature, apart from the looking at just the statistical significance. And then, of course, I'm going to look at the cons of feature, if this is actually addressed, people are getting spammed or not, and then look at the voice of customer. Like most of our product managers, even after an A/B test ends, they look at the VOCs, they like look at the user research data. We have that research team who goes to users and see, hey, did you notice this on our app or website? So I'm sure there is a research team at Instagram, and I'm going to look at the VOC and the survey data to see how users are feeling about it before I decide to launch or not launch.
And that could also like happen before even doing the A/B testing, maybe to like tune up like the feature, how exactly we're gonna basically trigger that conversation. We can probably maybe run some focus studies beforehand at a smaller scale, basically build a proper like MVP, and then we can actually do a more scalable testing. So that could actually happen like before that, I would say.
Oh yes, definitely. Like before doing all the effort, we can do at the do the user survey research and ask users, hey, what if, how much time do you spend on Instagram Messenger versus Instagram? Do you like, to have all the business conversations on Instagram? Do you like to have daily chores conversation on Instagram? So yes, definitely that can be one of the idea.
So I think we can wrap up the conversation. I think I already like provided some of the comments and feedback throughout the interview, and I like your thought process generally in terms of identifying the right level of metrics, and then the variety of metric that you mentioned, because any of them could actually negatively or positively like affect our business. So it's really important to pay attention to them. I mean, either is it like as simply as tracking or like part of a proper A/B testing. So that those are the things that we need to address, I think. And I already like mentioned some comments about how you organize those metrics and how you can actually clarify that what are the metrics that are actually applicable to A/B testing versus the ones that feature tracking, feature like success tracking. So definitely disclaimer should be there, so the interviewer don't get confused that, oh yeah, I mean, are we really having those stuff for two groups or not? So it's really good to just like classify them. But I think in general, you did a good job in that sense as well. As I mentioned, let me always like go for one single North Star metrics and then like talk about drivers to drive that. And definitely as you mentioned, never forget cannibalization and guardrail metrics, because you may doing a good job apparently in driving like a lot of metrics, and your features probably doing well, but it could come at the expense of like losing a lot of other like important drivers that you really care about, or like maybe piecing off customer because something going on, or like the app crashes several times, and because of that other capability, or like maybe incompatibility between your functionality and the third party like integration. So that could also be I think a key factor here. Really need to pay attention to those performance issues.
Thank you so much, Hanif. It was a nice interacting with you. Amazing feedback. I'll take care of it in the future, especially the North Star metric and what can be the future opportunities. How can we expand that?
So before ending this mock session, I would like to basically feature some of the experiences and feedback from our users from Interview Query. For example, like Rory saying that they use Interview Query for the interview question part, like related to SQL, found it very useful and easy to use in general. Sankal by saying that it was quite useful for me to improve my Python skills, like trying to solve problems, especially it enables someone to try, then kind of look at solutions and then try to improve answer. And also at a company level, and it has a good section, good differentiation between easy, medium, and hard. Debated all the questions are categorized and like at different levels. They're tagged based on their appearances for different companies' interview process. You can get the clarity that, okay, it is really an actual Meta or like Google question, and to understand how exactly relevant are those problems to particular interview process. I think that's something that is pretty unique and the interesting offering that Interview Query has, and that this is also apparent in several testaments that we have from people. Great. I wish you best of luck with your progress in your career, and also enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a great day.